To my left is Frank Melloul, who is from I24 News, and he's the CEO, and he will be giving a short presentation about his company. Next to him, Doron Revivi, COO of SatLink Communications, and on my far side, Uzan, Chairman of Screenz. So before we get into the kind of the debate about what has been achieved in Israel, I thought it'd be useful for each of our contributors to tell you a little bit about their company and their story and how they see the development of tech in Israel. So to start with you, Frank, if you'd like to tell us about your company.
Okay, good morning. I just want to tell a little story about I24 News. I24 News is the newest international news channel broadcasting from the heart of the Middle East. And I'm very emotional to be here this morning because I used to come to the MIP, but it's the first time coming as a CEO and to explain what is the first startup international news channel. Because just 1 year ago, there was nothing about I24 News, just a white paper. And it's the first channel that we built from the scratch. And how to build from the scratch with a startup mindset. With a startup mindset because we found a place in the Jaffa port, a big hangar in Tel Aviv, 2,000 square meters. There was nothing. And we built this free channel in French, English, and Arabic speaking in 100 days. We start to build at the end of March, and we launch the free channel the 17th of July, which is amazing to launch this kind of international news channel, but it's also amazing to find people with a startup mindset to have the energy to build this kind of international news channel. So also, it's not another international news channel, as we used to say, because there is another way to see the world. Where you are broadcasting from the Middle East, and you know that in the Middle East it's not so quiet, it's very interesting to see beyond. To see beyond is the tagline of I24 News, because there is many international news channels in the Middle East, but it's also important to share other values because we are broadcasting from Israel, and Israel is a democracy in the Middle East. So to see beyond is also the I24 News meaning. So what is the I24 News meaning? Of course, I for Israel. We can find also I for Islam. We have I for international. We have I for information. Everybody can find his own I in I24 News. So I want to say also that it's the channel of the diversity because it's the only newsroom in the world, unique newsroom, where you have 150 journalists with 35 nationalities, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, agnostic, seculars, producing together the same content with 3 studios, 1 in French, 1 in English, and 1 in Arabic. So it's 1 strategy, 1 editorial line, 3 languages, 1 channel. So also we are the last international news channel born in the digital era, so it's very important for us to use the Israeli new technology to build this channel. And in the newsroom in I24 News, you don't have border between the content of the broadcast and the content of the multimedia. If you are watching the channel in the multimedia, it's exactly the same in streaming live that you are watching on the regular broadcast. So anywhere in the world you can find the channel because we are streaming live on the applications, on the smartphone, tablets, and everything. But also we are broadcasting with a satellite coverage. So I'm doing also the presentation of SatLink because this is the footprint of SatLink. We are covering all Asia, Europe, Africa, and Middle East. And we have a branding block now since 2 weeks in America. And if everything is okay, in the summer we will broadcast 24/7 in all America. My first target is to be the alternative of Al Jazeera.
Okay. Alternative in
values, of course, in editorial, and to be part of the zapping of the international market. And after 7 months, I'm very happy to see that we are starting to succeed.
Okay, thank you. And Doron, if you'd like to tell us about SatLink.
Yeah. Well, in Israel there is a commercial about oranges. So you see in the commercial, a company that produces oranges, you see in the commercial that what they are doing, they're just producing oranges. They just squeeze oranges in order to make an orange juice. So what we do, we just deliver content. This is our profession. We take the content everywhere in the world and we move it to every place in the world, whatever is needed. For example, I-24. It's a bit more complicated than squeezing orange juice, but this is what we are doing. We do it for 20 years. We located next to Jerusalem, and we are located in all areas around the world. I mean, Europe, States, Asia, and Africa, and this is what we are doing.
So when you say you just deliver content, what makes you unique against other people who deliver content?
We try to do it, of course, very fast. We try to do it with a bit of advanced technology. We deliver it everywhere. I mean, not only everywhere. If you need it on the internet, you need it on the satellite, you need it any means of delivery of content. That's what we're doing. We're taking the content from our suppliers and we work with them and for solutions. And we find a way to do it faster and cheaper. And last 2 months we just launched channels. We knew about it a day before, and we launched it in 2 hours in the States, in Europe, and in Asia, in a matter of 2 hours that we knew about it. And it was on Friday. You know, in Israel, Friday, it's a very tough day to work.
Yeah.
So this is what we are doing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Ellie, your company is a younger, newer company. I have to express vested interest because we have a project that we've announced together at MIP, but maybe you'd like to share with the audience what your company does.
Sure. So good morning. I will give a bit of a background. So 2 years ago, we started Screenz, and I think when you look at the industry, international and globally, and not just in Israel, you see that there is a huge gap between technology and content. This is 2 industries that are supposed to work together so closely, but I think a good example is what you see in the States, that there is the flight between LA and Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, where all the startups are. It's 45 minutes, but no one takes that flight on a regular basis to develop stuff. And I think in Israel something happened that is a bit different, and we see how television and digital and technology is melting together. And Screenz started working exactly like the format industry, as we divide all our platforms to segments of content, from cooking, dating, reality, talent shows, and the platforms enabling the shows and the formats to be a 360 experience that involve the audience, and not with television that is in one medium and the digital as other, because at the end, television will be broadcast through just digital, and the way and everything will be connected. And I think we can see it in our last project as the Rising Star that we are doing with Keshet, the digital.
Clearly, you are 3 successful tech and platforms in Israel. This market is dominated by Israel, both in terms of content and tech. Why is it that Israel, which is a relatively small country, is so successful at this time? Frank?
Maybe I can give another point of view, like my 2 friends, because I'm coming from abroad. I was in France, I was working in France 24, and I decided to join Israel to launch this amazing challenge. But I have to say, what I was discovering in Israel, it's an amazing energy. And we used to speak about Israel and to say it's the startup nation. I don't think I could build I-24 News as a startup international news channel in another country than Israel, because they are formatted like that. They are thinking like that. Everything has to be faster. Everything has to go more quickly than in another place because they don't have time.
So Doron, you're an Israeli. What is it about the Israeli culture that influences the success in the media space?
Well, I think there is many things, and I try to think about it, and I think about it yesterday a lot, and all the time. I want to be a bit philosophical and a bit of anthropology, and if you're a religious guy, you are dealing all the time with problems. If I can do that, if I cannot do that, if I can do this, I can do this, and you're all the time facing problems while you're living. I'm not a small problem, sometimes a big problem. And this is something in our nature. We are all the time, in our mind, facing problems and see how to solve them. And this is how we became very creative. This is one of the things. The second thing is, we are a nation that built from another nation. So we have a lot of people that coming from any continent in the world. They came to Israel. And so the mixture is huge. Then you put the 40 degrees centigrade in summer and 95% humidity, you get very creative. And of course, then young people, they are 18, they are finishing school, and immediately they are throwing out to the army, which they leave home and then they need to live by themselves for a few years and learn to do things by themselves. And when they're going out, they're using the knowledge and the ideas of solving and creating and finding solutions in their daily days. So this is, I guess, what we are getting very successful in it.
Picking up on what Doron just said, Eli, the army training is a discipline, but also how much is the technology that's developed within the army influencing the kind of the startup media technology in Israel?
I think that you can see a lot of the guys that are, in the army divisions that are tech are going straight after to all the biggest, highest companies and build their own startups. But I think it's not just this. I think this is one thing, and the army have kind of hub and all the biggest companies just chasing those guys when they are out of the army. But this is one thing. I think that the one more important thing here is that Israel is a country without natural resources. And when you don't have resources, you can't be lazy. When you have like a huge amount of oil, you can wait, you can do the other things. And when you don't have other options, you just start being creative. I don't think it comes also from a survivor.
Isn't the joke they say that Moses should have turned left rather than right, and he would have got the oil rather than...
Yeah, maybe. It will be less creative, but more wealthy.
To be slightly provocative, Gary Carter, the chairman of Shine Group, North Europe, said in his presentation on Sunday, despite the international perception of the success of Israel, it's all marketing and hype. How much is Israel's success, both in content and in tech, a great marketing campaign, and the reality is not that Israel are as successful as they appear to be?
I don't think it's two separate things. So the marketing is one thing, and I think that Israel is doing great marketing, and you can see it here in MIP that there is a lot of Israeli presence. But at the other end, there is really nice results. If you look at the high-tech industry or the content industry, you see an amazing success from companies like Waze and Viber, and a lot of companies that are the high-tech industry. It's already proven tested. It's not just marketing and hype. And I think you see it with the time, and with the content it will take a bit more because it's started a bit later. But I think I can summarize it's just two separate things that are both, I think, good. And I hear a lot about the lecture. I didn't have the chance to watch it, but I know Gary and as a friend, and I think that if you look what stays from the lecture is the same thing, is hype and marketing, because if you think what is the lecture is about the hype, and this is what people are just discussing a day after.
Yeah. I mean, Israel, without doubt, has been punching above its weight now for a number of years. How, Doron, does it keep itself, ahead of the game and in the position it is now, in the next few years?
I think a lot of hard work and a lot of good ideas and a lot of technology, because every time and every day there is a new, and I'm seeing a lot of it, a new technology that's coming out of Israel and probably affect the industry. And you know, it's getting better, faster, and a lot of creative ideas how to do it cheaper. And there is, you know, if you looked in the street of Tel Aviv, there is so many startup companies that are dealing with telecommunication, and not only on telecommunication. I feel any industry and telecommunication, you see it a lot because it's very fast, but it's there. And I see, you know, Frank could tell by himself. You know, they started the channels. How many days it took you to start?
100.
100 days approximately. So imagine 100 days to start from nothing, from scratch, from zero, to broadcast around the world. You need energy. You need people to support it. And I think Frank, for example, knew it and saw the potential of it. So this is, I think, how we can compete, and this is how we will maintain our advantage on it.
Frank,
Hard work.
Where do you see the threat to Israel coming from? I don't mean from Iran with missiles. I mean in terms of you know, in the TV space. You're in a very competitive market in the news world. So you know, how do you perceive the threat, and how do you deal with the threat?
I think the threat is coming from the first question you ask to him, because I'm not agree at all with the lecture that you mentioned. Israel is not good at all in its own marketing. Mm-hmm. And the threat is here. Because, as we said, there is a lot of creativity, there is a lot of ideas, and this is also the reason why of I24 News, the Israeli marketing. And the day they will have a real strategy about the marketing, you will hear more about Israel and the success story.
I mean, one thing I noticed with Israel is Israel's very good, and your companies are very good at doing collaborations with foreign companies and linking up together as well. You know, with Screenz, how did you come together? You know, on Rising Star, you know, that was a creative meets tech situation. So how did you create that?
So first of all, it's a cachet format, and the technology part of it, and I think this is in all development, we will see it more and more, that the process is really changed in the last few years. There is a way to do the development, and it should be in 2014, but if you look at the content industry, till almost now, the development process was a lot of creative guys sitting in one room for 9 months or 10, and then they launch their product, and they are pretty sure that this is the best thing. That they are now very stable and ready to launch it. And sometimes they look for digital extension for it when they finish the concept. And when you think about the high-tech industry and the digital industry, it's totally the opposite. Because it means that you start something, you get feedback from the audience, and you always change what you're doing. You get feedback all the time, and this is so different. I think that in those days, the development process should be a creative director and a CTO sitting around the same table and developing a new format. And this is what we're trying to do and doing with a lot of broadcasters and production companies around the globe. And Screenz gives that, kind of go with them hand by hand to the digital phase or field. But this is a different kind of process, that it's not like a fall, it's more kind of a scrum that everybody is...
It's a proper partnership, is what you're describing. And Doron, how do you work with creative companies, and how do you help them to deliver their content?
Well, first, we're looking for a solution all the time to make it, to come to our client and say, listen, we can do something else, we can do it better, we can do it cheap, or we can do it, we will get you the advantage that you need in order to have more clients, more support, more interactive. So we're looking for companies that are in the market we check them, and we offer to our client the solution, and we find. And sometimes we find something that can reduce the price or can make it better. We come to our client and say, listen, we have something else for you. You should try it. We test it. It's working. Go for it. You know, and this is how we are usually looking, and we all the time, this is what we are doing. We are trying to focus on what we are doing and to deliver to our client, the businesses, a better solution, a better ideas, a better technology. So this is what we are looking, and we are not developing it, but we are implementing it very fast. We are testing it. We see that it's working, and then we offer to our client.
And do you work with Frank?
Yep.
So can you give us an example between you of how that relationship works?
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Frank, how was the relationship for you?
You know, I have two kinds of partnership in Israel because I'm not competing with the Israeli market. I'm not broadcasting in Hebrew. So I want to be also, it's part of our mission, the showcase of the Israeli industry, of the media. And this is the reason why we have a lot of journalists coming in the channel and attending the debate and the talk show. So I have partnership of the content side with Channel 2 and the news. And also, when I was starting to develop the international broadcast of the channel, I wanted to be in Europe, I wanted to be in Africa, I wanted to be in Asia, in the Middle East since the launch. And I prefer to deal with one guy than with 10 guys. And I discovered SatLink, we met together, and we understood, I have to say immediately, the spirit and the target of I24 News. And they offered me the opportunity in one shot to be in this whole area. So this is another kind of partnership because, as Doron said, part of their job is to helping me to be more efficient and to go more faster than the others to compete.
And Doron, how would you see the relationship with I24?
Well, again, as Frank said, we met them and we looked at solution and what they need, and we come up with with the ideas how to do it better and to do it cheaper and faster and reliable. And it was a ongoing discussion until
you said cheaper.
Of course, there was always a place, though.
There's always a deal.
Yeah, but I can give an example. You know, we are broadcasting Reuters all over the world, so it's one place, one-stop shop, and many others, client international. So we're mainly working with international clients, and it's very, very demanding. So there is no place for mistakes. There is no place for making things wrong. So we need to look at it very carefully. We need to put the right technology in the right place, not too expensive, not too cheap. Sometimes you need to, and this is something that we do with our client on a daily basis. We check ourselves, and we come up with a solution for them or better ideas how to do it. And this is how we're doing. For example, we have a client that wants to broadcast to his boat all over the world, anytime, whatever is shipping. So we find a solution to that, and this is what we are doing.
Okay. I will come to the audience in a minute, so if you have any questions, have them prepared. I'm going to ask one more question before I come to the audience. So, knowing that Israel is a small country with a small population, by nature you have to be internationally focused companies. So I'd like to ask all of you, how do you position yourself to tap into the international market? How do you best get that message across of what you do?
So for me it's easier because I'm coming from the international market. So I have to say one of my missions is to connect the world to Israel, but it's also to connect Israel to the world. And it's also a challenge to explain to the Israeli that the world is existing. But I'm bringing this experience, and I'm trying to, with I24 News, to connect the Israeli media to the world and to make them understand what is the reality of the international market, and to connect the international market and tell them, look, what you are using is Israeli and you don't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, Doron, you said just before that, your focus is very international. What percentage of your business is international?
85%, maybe 90%. Now, in the last few years, we are more focused on Israel, and we extended our client in Israel internally, but we are mainly international. The companies already exist for 20 years. And the location of Israel in matter of satellite, it's a strategic one because we see most of the world. We see the Asia, we see Africa, we see Europe, and we see part of the States. So it was very easy for us in that terms to approach to international companies. Of course, you need to support it with good atmosphere, good people, and good service, which in Israel, I think we can provide it in a very competitive manner.
Eli, I know that you have an international office in London run by the fantastic Ifat, who's been there for a couple of years. So you have physically set up offices, and I think in the States as well you have an office?
Yeah, we have 5 satellite offices internationally, so in the States too, and in Europe. But at the end, I think that regarding your question, that you don't have really a choice if you want to. You know, in Israel, of course, for IT companies, you must run it internationally because the market is so small. And from content perspective, from language to the amount of people that are you can approach that content or offer it to them, we're talking about 7 million people, and we are consider over 8 maybe, and we consider in the calculation, like very small kids, very old people. So then when you understand that you have like 4 million people, 4.5 million people that you can create economy with, it's problematic for the long run.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing for Israel because it makes all we see guys that are just students that are from the first day. They don't think local. They think internationally.
It forces you to think in a
you don't have any other choice if you want to have a big success. And and even every creative guy in Israel, I think, kind of think between high tech and building a startup or creating formats or working in the advertising agencies. But it's the same. It's all about creative and technology. I think is you can see it in all generation that is now going up.
Okay. I know that we have some questions, so let's go to the audience. There's a lady with a hand up there first, and then there's a gentleman down here next.
First, thanks to you all, and I'm from JSBC, Jiangsu Broadcasting Corporation, one of the leading provincial broadcaster in China. And my question is to the I-24 news channel, and actually we have our own news channel supported by our own news center, and we are trying hard to build our digital platform, for example, the news app, and we are producing some social-based news shows. And will you just share your experience on 2 areas? First, the social-based news TV show, and the second, the news investigation based on big data and maybe online samples. Just if you have done something in these areas, or may I have your suggestion of these areas? Thank you very much.
Keep it brief.
It's an item for another lecture.
Yeah.
First of all, of course, we are, as I told you, we are the last international news channel born in the digital era. So everything is happening on the multimedia is very important for me to be connected. And we are using the social media a lot. We have daily question that we are using as a poll in the social media. But I have to say the area where I'm using the most in the social media is for the Arabic language, because after the Arab Spring we understood that all these Arabic countries are using a lot the social media, and I can tell you that most of the feedback that we have from the Arabic countries about I-24 News is coming from the social media. And the other question about how to produce some content with the multimedia and the social media, I don't have specific one, because as I told you before, I don't want any border between the content and the multimedia and the broadcast. Everything that we are producing is for the broadcast, the multimedia, the smartphone, the tablet, the application. This is the reason why we are dealing with very short content. We have 10-minute news and we have 16 minutes magazine, to be short, to be sure that it can be downloaded very fast, and people can watch on their screen. The idea is to watch I24 News everywhere in the world because of the multimedia.
Okay, thank you. Question down here.
Yes, I have two questions. I'm Serge from Écran Total, the French magazine. One is for Frank and the other is for Doron. To Frank, the question is, how do you break even? Because you're competing with Anglo-Saxon companies that have a large local market, or Al Jazeera is financed by oil. And so what's your model? And the second is to Doron. Do you have satellites? Do you own satellites?
So I24 News is very special because I think it's the only one international news channel which is not belonging to government. So we are a private channel, but
in America they don't belong.
Yeah, but they are financed by a political party, which is not my case. The break even as a startup is in 4 years. So I have 4 years to break even. So how I will deal with it? First, because when you are building in 100 days an international news channel, you have to prove that you are an international news channel. It's what we did, and after 6 months we decided to open the commercialization of the channel. So now we are starting to build an international strategy to get international advertising, because we don't have local market. We have only one signal. So if you are putting advertising on I24 News, your spot will be broadcast everywhere in the world at the same time. So we are targeting the international companies for and the international brands for the commercialization. We are also starting to sell content because we have very specific magazine about the region of Israel. When you are dealing with defense item, it's very interesting also, but we have a lot of report that we can do, and specific one that you cannot find in other place. And I will close with it. And the last thing, it's maybe we will work on pay TV distribution, because you can share some revenue with some operators in the world.
We're short on time, so the question, Doron, was, do you own satellites or not?
No, we don't, but our sister company owns a satellite, so we have some extent to satellite. But again, we are not only satellite. We do any solution that is available, and we combine between them. So our idea is just to pick up whatever is needed, and then we are not limited to one solution. We are open to all of them in order to produce a better solution to our client.
We're coming to the end of our time. I had one last question to ask you, and as an outsider, to me, Israel sometimes divides opinion, both politically and commercially. There are clearly some countries that probably would have a problem dealing with an Israeli company. How much does it restrict your business sometimes to be an Israeli company, Eli?
I think it's of course in specific countries, and we are not, we can't take, when you look at the business, I think the separation between those political situations and the business, I think that it's smart that it's separate. But of course, if there is territories that don't want to work with Israel, it's their they need to handle it. Yeah, and that's not. This is something we can. There is the rest of the world, and we are working there, and it's all good.
Doron, is that ever an issue for your business?
Yeah, there is, of course. There is some countries there is an issue. We find a solution by dealing with it. We do a cooperation with other companies, but I think the country that doesn't want to work with Israel, I think they are missing something that is important to them too, and this is to do things differently. But there is an issue. Yeah. But we overcome those.
Yeah, and Frank, with your business, it seems like your model is pretty much addressing that issue, which is that Israel divides opinion, and you want to express that.
Yeah, but except Arabsat, I have to say, who doesn't want to broadcast the channel, I don't feel this kind of situation, because if you prove that you have an impact and you are open-minded, you can deal with that. And I have to say, on I24 News, even the spokeswoman of the Hamas is attending the talk show once a week. Yeah. So after that, you can do what you want.
So So yeah, you're making the difference. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. A very interesting session, and thank you, the audience, for joining us.